This video is brought to you by DC Studios Showcase, the official podcast featuring our very own Coy Jandreau. More on them in just a bit.
Citizens of the Reject Nation, we got ourselves a couple of big things to talk about. We're starting shooting this late, which is great because a big news story happened to drop in the middle of this delay. Sometimes God loves to rain upon us with beautiful, glorious news. Some news that I feel very positive about.
I feel so good about this news, dude.
So we got to talk about Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Spider-Man Brand New Day. There was this Disney event that occurred. A couple of other news stories. There's video chapters here. I want to kick it off with something extremely positive I want to talk about with all of you. I've been waiting for this podcast to share to Coy directly. Leave a like on this video, by the way. We upload these every single Friday, Real Rejects Podcast. So yes, if you want to skip this part, you can, but I really want to share this story.
I've been waiting all week.
Roxy got invited to do a shrinking set visit. And the way it was pitched, it wasn't pitched of like, it felt like an influencer one of like, you're just going to look at the sets, like one of those.
Yeah.
And then you can attend the panel that they're going to do.
Great.
That's how I read it. And that's kind of how we interpreted it. And Roxy knows I'm a huge fan of the show Shrinking. Shrinking is a show that stars Harrison Ford and Jason Segel on Apple Plus. It is one of my favorite shows. And if it ends, when the series eventually ends, if it ends successfully, it'll go down as one of my all-time favorite shows. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. So, and Roxy knows how in love I am with it. So she, we started this podcast. The first thing we ever talked about was Shrinking. So I was enthusiastic about going, and we were waiting in this giant line at the Warner Brothers lot. It was this for your consideration panel that they're doing. And the entire time when I'm kicking it with Roxy, I'm telling her, oh man, I'm just so excited. I don't care if, as long as we're like relatively close to the panel, that's all I need. Like I've been telling you, oh man, it'd be so cool to like see Harrison Ford live. That's all I've been saying. See Harrison Ford live. And I am eternally grateful to Roxy because she let me. She's been a massive, champion for Apple TV, and so have you. Both
my
of you
favorite
guys.
streamer, dude.
I don't know too many people who talk about Apple TV to me, but you and Roxy are the two who talk about Apple TV a lot to me. And then we get the person who invited Roxy, agency for Apple, finds her and me, and they bring us to a different line because apparently we're supposed to be with this content creator group. And I was like, oh, okay. A couple minutes ago, I was just saying I'm happy we're not with a couple of influencers, but okay, yeah, sure, whatever. and I was excited, though. I was really excited because I'm like, oh, we're going to get a little bit of special treatment. Skip this line. When we're with these content creators, the craziest thing dawned on me while we were talking. I said to them out loud, this is weird. We're all fans of the show?
Not common.
Why I'm bringing that up, and Coy will know better than anybody, a lot of these influencer events for these big studios are there for people to take photos and get the hell out. A lot of them are not fans. A lot of them don't give a shit.
Yep.
Sometimes it's rare does it bother me? Sometimes it bothers me, depending on the property. Like I remember, I know this person, so if he's watching, he's probably gonna be upset. But I'm gonna say it anyway. There's this person, like when we went to this Doctor Who event, there was somebody who dressed up in a Doctor Who outfit, a whole suit, got a photo with the Doctor, never seen the show. And it's like shit like that, you know?
Yeah, dude.
So they're there to promote.
I call them Wikipedia hosts. They're my least favorite thing. People that read the bio, read a log line and go, and then they danced on TikTok, got 2 million subscribers, and all of a sudden they're an expert. Lies. Yeah, I hate it.
That's usually what it is. And then the people at Apple were like, we just want to invite real fans. It's like, a lot of times the followings have to be enormous followings to go to these things. And a lot of them were like 30 to 60,000 followers on their social media platforms. And I thought that is
so rare,
super rare. And I was over the moon about that. I'm like, oh, these are like great people who actually care about the fans. That's awesome. So we're walking to the first set. After meeting the production design team, we go to the first room. I'm recording. They open the door. We got a surprise for you. First person, Harrison Ford. It's fucking Harrison Ford. And I am like kind of freaking out right now internally. And I'm trying to play it cool. He makes a joke. Roxy seems way more used to this and acclimated quickly to the situation, much faster than I did. People are asking, and he's a therapist in the show, and he's standing behind his desk and he's asking questions. He's taking questions, him and Letitia Maxwell. And they're getting questions. The whole time I'm like clutching this chair, like sweating. going like, I gotta think of a question. I'm like, I have a perfect question I want to ask. I have a perfect question. It's so different than what everyone else is asking. Roxy then asks a question, and it is almost exactly the question that I had.
That's why we love her.
And I'm like, that's great that she got the question, and this is really her event, and I'm here because of her. That's good. But I need to think of something else now. And then Alice starts answering, and then I think of a question to follow it up with Roxy, and I asked a question to Harrison. I said, did this show, working on this show, has it made you more vulnerable in real life conversation? And he proceeds to answer, and he gives the most genuine, sincere, not the sardonic, sarcastic Harrison Ford that I kind of expected, a very long, sincere answer to which I heard none of it. Because
Harrison Ford's answering my question.
I'm literally recording him, like trying to be subtle, and I'm picking up on facial cues. But the whole time, like, Harrison Ford's making eye contact with me. Harrison Ford's looking at me, right? Like, that's Harrison. I do not hear a single word the man is saying at this moment, which is great. I'm really plugging myself to get future interviews.
The man wants to go to all these events and not make a fool of himself. Oh my God, Harrison Ford.
And the Apple team was so kind. They were like, you guys asked such great questions, because then we got to meet the rest of the cast. Jason Segel,
yeah.
Brett Goldstein, everyone. It was phenomenal. It was one of the greatest days of my YouTube career. I was texting Olivia all night, like, I wish you were here. She does not give a shit about the show, but I love that she knows how much I'm in love with the show.
Man.
She hasn't seen it yet, in all fairness. But it was one of the greatest days ever. And I only wanted to see Harrison Ford. I got to meet him, and that's thanks to Roxy.
Dude,
like,
that's
seriously,
so cool.
I owe her a lot. That there was a bucket list that she knocked off. And yeah, you could watch like the whole thing on social media, and there's a vlog that we're also uploading as well. But yeah, I wanted
Greg
to share
got to
that.
hear what Harrison actually said by watching the replay of his own.
I was so nervous to play back because I edited that video myself.
Did I say words?
Yeah. I was like, did I actually ask a good question? It seemed like he was really answering the question.
Cuts you watching, you're like, Harrison's like, is this young man okay? I'm going to make eye contact and try to bring him back. I'm so glad that went well, man. That's so special.
Yeah.
I know how much the show means to you. I know how much his work on the show means to you. And I know how much it resonates when you meet someone that you've seen since you were a child, that you've respected the work of, especially someone that's known for being a curmudgeon, and then you get a real connection.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about to me, is like, you want to give someone a little bit of light back that they gave you your whole life. Like, the reason I like doing interviews is if I can give someone a little morsel of like, hey, you've given me 30 years of stuff. If I can give you a 30-second thing that makes you realize I did that, I've done it. And to me, that's what interviews uniquely do. And it's so special when it's someone that it's like a lifelong thing. So that makes me so happy. Like,
I mean, like Jason, I love the whole cast, but Harrison Ford is obviously like the pinnacle, the one you want to meet, right? And Jason Segel was unbelievably nice as well. And it was cool because the cast seemed like they really wanted to interact and participate, and they felt like genuinely like they leaped off the screen.
I love that
really
Apple
cool.
brought people that cared.
That's
why those people got to. The
part.
reason the actors got to interact with people is because they weren't there to be props.
Yeah.
Like, if you invite fans, you have fans interacting with the people on the show, not people that are like, I mean, short of the glory of Harrison Ford, the average person gets to interact with the people in the show about the show.
Yeah.
There's always going to be in the back of your head, oh my God, Indiana Jones and Han Solo are here. But it's about the show when you invite fans. So I hope that becomes more of the trend. Like, I do think the ebb and flow of social media, we've reached an apex and it's starting to dip. And I think we're going to see more of the specificity, I hope. And I would love if more people become like Apple, where the job of inviting people becomes twofold. Like, it's looking at the numbers, but then looking at what the page is posting to get those numbers. So that makes me really happy that they did that. Because I think Apple is the best streamer by and large. Consistency, output, choices, boldness, all the things I want from someone making stuff that isn't going to theaters, because they don't have to make $100 million on a thing, because they've got that product and this product and all the things they do. And I think that's really beautiful when a company leverages that instead of just being like, we can be a monopoly.
Absolutely.
So much love to them and much love to that event. That's cool, man. I'm jealous in a positive way.
I'm writing down one of the things I forgot to write down for our notes. I want to talk about the studio now that it's over.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, great show, guys.
All right. Yes. We should do the breaking news that everybody's going to click in this video for.
Let's get into the thing that everyone wants to talk about. Moments before we hit record, it was revealed that Disney has changed release dates, and this is something that we have talked about so much on this show about how it's coming too soon, it's feeling rushed, and as much as we get crap for saying stuff like that, we are saying that because we're not trying to join the train of screw Disney and screw Marvel. That is the complete opposite. We wanted it to be delayed so they can make a better thing. So they can have the time to do what they need to do to tell the best story possible. So do you have the exact release dates?
They have moved from Doomsday was originally supposed to be out in May of 2026. Not just May, but literally May 1, 2026. Guys, that is what it's today is the 21st. So it is 1 week to the end of May. So 52 minus 4, 48 weeks away. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
I did not want a movie to come out in 48 weeks that is currently filming. It is now coming out December 7th, 2026, which is
news.
a much better release date.
News.
And then we were originally supposed to get Secret Wars on May 7th, 2027. Now it is coming out December 17th, 2027.
A year?
A year.
Perfect.
So they're still a year apart, but they're a year apart of 18 months from now.
That's amazing.
Like, that is so much better.
That's amazing. Before we go into it, did you see the Disney Blockbuster Consumer Products banner?
No.
They had an image of, they had a Doom image they put in the banner, and this is like from Disney.
Is it like a Doom? Am I about to see the first Doom?
This might be it. Here, I'm going to put the laptop down and you can lift it up.
This feels like a historic moment. All right.
Check it out.
Oh, it's Alex Ross art. Okay, that makes me happy. But they're officially choosing the classic image. Okay, this gives me hope. Because Alex Ross is the foundation of photorealism for art and paint style for me. It's clearly what they're basing a lot of Fantastic Four off of. This, a lot of people are going to consider a reach, but I accept you. If they're giving us Alex Ross tone Fantastic Four, and they're giving us Dr. Doom's first image by Alex Ross, maybe we'll have a more connected Fantastic Four to Dr. Doom than I feared. That's a reach. I accept it, but this being their first image does give me some hope. That's cool.
Yeah, there you go. You want to elaborate a little bit more on why you think this is a good idea about the release date?
Okay, so I think the biggest problem with the movies that haven't resonated as much as the movies that have is the movies that have resonated from the entire MCU. We're talking phase 1 through 5. Have been the ones that felt like they had a vision to me. Like whether that's Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Winter Soldier, those movies all came from people that had a plan.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is Winter Soldier was the Russos' first Marvel foray. Like, that's crazy. They had done Community. And it's funny because if they got like greenlit now, the internet would be like, oh, the guys that made Community are doing an Avengers movie. Like, it's insane to look at what the culture was then as far as reacting to things. But the great denominator is James Gunn got to make a trilogy of Guardians films because no one was invested in that group of teams, and then he made his own vision out of it. I think Winter Soldier was a very bold swing in the specificity one. As Iron Man was coming out of nowhere, it was a Paramount release that Marvel was still licensing stuff. Like, they were writing that movie on the day. Like, it's a crazy thing. I think this allows the film to not be as made by studio because so many of the films that haven't worked, to me, Thor: The Dark World, my opinion, Multiverse of Madness, to me, the Marvels, the ones that I consider were the ones that felt like they were already filmed before a director came on board.
Yeah.
And to me, when they said the release date was May 1, 2026, and they're doing the chairs in April or whatever, like, they're just now starting to film to scale. Yeah. How much has to be done in post-production if they're going to be wrapping within 10 months of it being final cut, which means how much is already done? That isn't directors getting to make something. That's a team that's already assembled a thing, and they're just putting actors in place.
Yeah.
To me, this is, hey, we started working on this. We realized the scope and scale of it. We now have to adjust, and we're going to trust you guys to adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
I think the strength of Thunderbolts was it felt like a director that had a vision, and Marvel trusted the film enough to not call it New Avengers. They trusted the movie to come out and then be like this. Now, the movie is now broken even. It's not making gangbusters, but that faith means more to me than the movie doing hundreds of millions of dollars. That belief in your director, in your cast, in the writers, that's what this feels like to me, is that same faith in, hey, we had this whole plan, but you're telling us you need time. Let's give you some time. Let's give our visual effects artists that are underpaid and overworked more than 9 months to give us a final cut. Like, this to me is a strong release date still. Like, summer is great. So is Christmas. So it's giving us that opportunity. It's still releasing them a year apart. And Now Brand New Day opens before Doomsday.
Cool.
Which is exciting. And now there's only 2 movies out of Marvel for 2026. I think that's great news. Every bit of this is great.
To add on a tiny bit more, this gives them a chance to evaluate as well, depending on how reception for stuff goes. Because a lot of the time when they greenlight this stuff and then they're shooting shit, I imagine that's probably one of the conundrums they maybe run into, like with a project like Ironheart or some of their other ones that they delay and like, oh shit, but it's already done.
Gotta put it out.
yeah. And because, you know, there's a delayed effect that happens a lot with these movies when like, this is not working in the Hollywood sphere right now, but we've already shot it.
Yeah.
This allows them time to be like, okay, Thunderbolts did well. Let's see how Fantastic Four does. Is there anything there that we should magnify
really good point.
or work on?
People love Pedro. Put it more like that's obvious, but like, you're right. That's a really good point. They can be reactionary in a positive way.
Yeah, not reactionary late game panic mode. Let's re-edit, chop this up, or do some stupid reshoots kind of. We've seen the complete opposite where it goes bad. This allows time for like true assessment.
Actually, I want to reframe that. They're not going to be reactionary. They're going to be responsive.
Yeah.
That's the word I meant to say. And that's what this feels like. It feels like a response, not a panic.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I definitely felt like the Doom decision, and I've been on record and people get mad at me, but I stand by it. The Doom decision felt like a business decision. In the show business, it felt more business than show. And I have long felt that Downey has not made that choice. Even like Sherlock and the things that he does, clearly because they make a lot of money, but that still feels like he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
This, I'm sure he wants to be Doom. I've loved what he's posted about Doom. Like that shot of the MF Doom quoted comic and like the things he's presented, I've loved. I didn't love the Downey Jr. Tony Stark flourish with the chairs, but short of that, everything he's done has made it feel like I did Oppenheimer. I played this type of character. I love working in the MCU. What if I could do this? Let me stretch. I loved your conversation about Kirk Lazarus out of Tropic Thunder. And like now I'm reframing it that way. Adding this doesn't feel like a business decision. This feels like let's let creators. This feels like a show decision. So I'm getting more and more excited for Doomsday by the day.
Yeah.
Like every decision since the initial me being like, I'm worried at Comic-Con, everything since then, I'm like, okay.
You see, it's really easy to spin a story like this and say, oh man, that must mean Disney's in shambles or something like that. And we might see some videos do that. I would advise people with caution that like that. I sincerely believe that is not the case. I think this is for the best. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We do have a couple of questions from patrons that are linked to this subject in a way. So I wanted to make sure to shout him out. William Daniels says, do you think it's possible that Doomsday is going to be all about showing how strong and dangerous Dr. Doom is, similar to how they treated Thanos in Infinity War?
I think it'll be a largely Doom film. Like I'd say it's going to be like 70-30. I think Thanos, I would say, was like 65-35, maybe approaching 70-30. But we had context for Thanos, even abstractly. We had like a bit of a looming presence. We have not met Doom, so I think they have more work to do with Doomsday than they even did with Thanos.
Yeah. You see, like there's the conversation that people often say, and I think it's because, I think people usually say this because the Russo brothers said this, that Thanos is the protagonist of Infinity War. And there's an extent to that in which I agree. But I don't feel like the movie is from Thanos' perspective.
Right.
The perspective the movie adopts is he's definitely the villain of the story. So, you know, like protagonist and perspective are two different things.
Yeah.
I feel like with this question and what we're considering is like, is there a possibility that this movie is actually from Doom's perspective?
Oh.
That's at least how I would like them to treat Doomsday. I think that'd be very unique.
Yes. I had not considered that. I hope so.
Yeah.
I would love a Robert Downey Jr. led film to be Avengers Doomsday and then to find a way to have me be as connected to the character as I need to be. Because you can connect to a character in one movie. That's how most movies work.
Yeah.
But can you do that in a shared universe that you're an Avengers film, Doomsday? If they make this a Doomsday film that has the Avengers in it, I am way more on board.
Yeah, I think it would be cool if they did it from Doom's perspective.
Tis day.
Even if even if you see how he sees the other Avengers and you're actually in his point of view. Imagine, if you will, that opening scene of BVS when you see Bruce Wayne seeing how he sees Superman. A whole movie like of how Doom sees the world.
Yeah.
And not not the same trickery of like he's the protagonist, but really he's the villain of the story.
I think that right now in the comics, there's an event right now called One World Under Doom. I've talked to you about it a few times. It's their big summer event. It is so good at manipulating you with Doom has caused, open borders. He's caused like universal health care. He's caused all of these schools to get better education. He's doing all this stuff. And all of the people are slowly going like, he was a bad guy, but look at all the good he's doing. And all the heroes are like, it's Dr. Doom.
Yeah.
And so we're all waiting for the other shoe to drop, but he's demanding complete complacency. Like he's giving you this, but you're still under Doom's fist. And I would love to see something where it's so well written that you're watching a movie going like, but I see the net positives of his decisions, but it's like at what cost? And that could happen if you've got the lead that way. There's so many great movies that have you follow an antagonist and they're still the lead of the film. Like I think Fight Club is that.
Yeah.
Like it shows you all the power of like, anti-consumerism. I agree with you. Capitalism can be bad. I agree with you. Doing all this can be bad. Oh, wait, but we're blowing stuff up. Oh, wait, I've started to agree with this like urban terrorist. Yeah. If they make Doom that,
I would love it.
Like that's a movie.
I love it.
Yeah, maybe now they have time.
I love the commentary and the comic you were talking about. Sometimes tyranny becomes so overpowering that when someone does the slightest, nicest of things, the bar is so low that we over-glorify whatever that positive thing is.
Yeah, it's like Stockholm Syndrome, right? Like someone like you're trapped and then they give you water and you're like, I needed water and now I love.
Yeah.
Oh, no, but they trapped me.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. That strange day when you're shouting out something quite often and then one day they randomly turn into a sponsor. Let's backtrack a little bit first. You guys know Coy Jandreau, one of the core hosts here at Real Rejects, our comic book expert, our lore guy, the guy who can take a throwaway character and turn it into a giant conversation. Yeah, that guy. When he told me a few months ago that he was auditioning for the official DC Studios Showcase podcast, I was genuinely excited for him. Then to see him actually land that spot, wow. He's the comic correspondent on the show right alongside host Tyler Coates and Frankie Smith, who I met at Multicon, by the way. If you thought she was sweet on camera, she's even sweeter in person. She's a fantastic human being. Coy, with them, it's perfect. And honestly, it means a lot to us here too, because supporting this podcast, I don't know if I have to say the whole thing now, the DC Studios Showcase podcast, it genuinely feels like supporting part of Real Rejects. So, in case you missed the memo, what is it? The DC Studios Showcase podcast is your inside source for everything DC Studios. It's hosted by fans, made for fans, and gives you exclusive insights and interviews you won't find anywhere else. Every other Friday, Frankie, Tyler, and Coy break down DC's biggest news, dissect the latest shows and films, and highlight the must-read comics. Guests already include Lauren LaFranc from The Penguin, John Gunn from Creature Commandos, Katie Sackhoff from the Watchmen animated movies, and trust me, there's a more coming. I mean, Superman's not even out, and James Gunn's Superman on the horizon. They're diving deep. That means interviews with the cast and James Gunn himself, talking about what that character means to him and where the DC universe is headed. It is a fantastic podcast. And if you are a DC fan, this is the podcast to be subscribed to. You can watch episodes on Max or Max's YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every other Friday. Do not miss it. Show some love, support Coy, support the podcast. It's DC Studio Showcase. Thank you again for sponsoring this video. And then Ty at our Patreon, thank you, our super sexy rejects. He says, do you think Doom will use Loki or Franklin Richards, now that Sue Storm is confirmed to be pregnant, as his power source in replace of Molecule Man?
I do hope we get Molecule Man because that's a character I'd love to see. Someone that
What's a brief description of Molecule Man?
Molecule Man is like one of the most overpowered, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient characters because he literally controls things at a molecular level. Mm-hmm. So they had him basically be like a battery in the Secret War story where it's like that infinite power because he can literally reframe things at a molecular level. But that also means he's so overpowered that they don't use him a lot in the comics because like, what do you do? So he's also like fully mad. He's an interdimensional madness because he's kind of untethered to reality because of his ability. So I'd love to see someone like a Matthew Lillard or a Ben Foster, or, you know what I mean? A Lakeith Stanfield, like someone that like has that manic energy that they can kind of just feel unhinged. So I would hate to lose that and have someone like Loki, who we've had this great trajectory on. the God of Stories would allow for that battery element, for that infinite power. Franklin Richards, by the way, if you guys don't know, he can create entire galaxies and universes and realities. So it's an ability to satiate Galactus, because it's like, here, I made one for you, eat it. It's not sentient. But Franklin Richards also doesn't have that madness. He's a kid that's just trying to figure out what it's like to have this much power. I think the element of Molecule Man that makes Secret War so interesting is there's like a ticking clock to your power source. So if you use Loki, he's good now. And if you use Franklin Richards, that's a kid. I think Molecule Man would be better, but if you don't want to introduce a ton of characters because you're already introducing Doom, I could see them doing that.
Cool. Good answers. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Super Sexies, for submitting those questions there for us. We're going to move on to the next story now. All right, next one, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Let me go again, sorry. Next one, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Spider-Man 4. So at the Disney's Blockbuster Consumer Products Panel, an event that I did not know was an event until we started filming today, there was apparently some like banner or image there that featured, so they're thinking this might be the villains of the movie, Scorpion.
About time.
Boomerang. And
Interesting.
Tombstone.
Street level. Also, those are all really street level and really like henchman-y. That's like a very approachable crime saga, which is what we've been wanting.
Scorpion is the one we have talked extensively about. Michael Mando returning, really, really wanting that. Tombstone, it's great. Well, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man reintroduced him.
Yep. So he's popular again, and also Spectacular Spider-Man used him well. He's in the Spider-Man zeitgeist, but he's not so big people have associations with him, which is exciting.
Yeah, and I think you could get some free reign on as long as you eventually arc him into Tombstone, you know, what Tombstone looks like and all. But the origin or personality traits, I think you get a little bit more free reign on what you can do.
Because he's not exactly. He's not his household. I don't know anyone that didn't think your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man did a great job reinventing him. But that's because people aren't like, but he's got to be blah, blah, blah.
Boomerang? Am I reading this right? Is there? I mean, there's a Boomerang in DC, obviously.
There's a 70s Spider-Man villain. He was really popular for like the 70s and 80s in Spider-Man.
I can't say
I mean, he's not popular now. Yeah, he's a pretty cheesy guy, and I love it because he's like, you know, he's one of like in the era of like the Slider and the Big Wheel and Hypno Hustler. Like Spider-Man had a weird rogues in the 70s and 80s.
Well, Jai Courtney is now dead in the DC movies.
Bring him in.
So you can definitely use a Boomerang now without it being confusing at all.
You were just talking about Molecule Man a second ago in the last story. I've got maybe my favorite pick for Molecule Man. It just hit me.
Okay, sure.
Jonathan Tucker.
All right.
I pitch him all the time.
I know.
But that guy's manic energy. He also looks like he might snap at any moment. He's got like a cool build. Be cool to see Molecule Man instead of a tiny guy be like kind of physically intimidated. Jonathan Tucker, Boston Zone.
So, okay, with Tombstone.
Yes.
The strong albino hitman.
Boom. Filed down teeth, whispers.
Who do you think would be a good live action casting? What kind of interpretation would you hope for if they are doing a Tombstone?
I would love to see, there's a kid, his name escapes me. He's growing up, so he's probably in his mid-20s now. He's the lead of one of my favorite shows, Wu-Tang: An American Saga. He has this incredible deep voice. He plays the RZA. And Wu-Tang: An American Saga, by the way, if you watch any show I recommend that isn't comic-based, if you like any of my non-comic-based stuff, Wu-Tang: An American Saga is Breaking Bad levels of good. And if you like Marvel, how it assembles heroes, imagine a show that assembles rappers that form the basis of what rap is today, but in real time brings you like crime and drama from the early 90s. It's so good. The lead of that, do you have his name there?
Ashton Sanders.
Ashton Sanders, approved, got knighted by Denzel himself. Put him in. I think he was in Equalizer 3 because I got really excited when we watched that. Ashton Sanders, I think he'd be about the right age for like, if you want to make Tombstone like the new crime boss, like kind of like they did your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, if you want to go that way. I think if you're going older, it's a shame they didn't use my baby boy Heimdall nearly enough, because Idris Elba, man, if you've seen Luther, he'd be a great crime boss, like a British Guy Ritchie-esque crime boss, but he's been utilized. So I want to go a little younger, but I'm trying to think of an older, like wise street. Do you have anybody?
For
Tombstone?
My pick is really odd. I was thinking Forrest Whitaker for some reason.
I'm into that, especially after he's in the Disney house and he did great work on Andor.
He did do great work.
He's got that very intense, like manic whisper.
And he showed up in Havoc. as crime boss guy.
And that was fun.
It was fun watching him, and I believed him in it. And I feel like he's an actor who kind of gets underutilized, and he was in Black Panther, but I don't think he is anymore. Am I right about that? I don't remember what happens to his character in that
Actors
movie.
in Black Panther I want used more. Sterling K. Brown, that man only got 5 minutes of screen time, and he's one of our best working actors. Sterling K. Brown for anyone, but he'd be a great Tombstone. He's very intimidating once me. Looks good in a suit.
It would be cool. Well, they are. I mean, Coleman Domingo would be cool. But they are casting him for.
That's incredible.
Yeah, Coleman Domingo would probably
so
be a
good.
bitch and pick. Yeah. What about Boomerang? If they're saying Australia,
he's
Australian too.
He's a Boomerang. It's the most cliche.
I think you should just get Jack Courtney, but play like a different,
extreme,
still Australian, but not the same thing. Yeah.
I'm gonna go because he's one of my favorite Australians, and Disney loves him. He's a little old, but that could be funny. Ben Mendelsohn.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I want Ben Mendelsohn as an aged Boomerang, but he's still like quippy and witty. But he's like, I don't even need to move.
He's in the universe already, though.
Love me some Ben Mendelsohn. He slept on.
I feel like this is a pretty cool story.
That's dope, man. If that's true, that gives us the street level hope we've had.
And it dawned on me that two of these villains are two main villains. I mean, Tombstone's not really a villain in your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, but they're two main characters in your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe they saw the response to that.
And they're like, oh, look, a street level thing went well.
A street level thing that went incredibly well that was dealing with multiverse implications.
Yeah, which is what they've been pitching. Can you imagine if that show was somehow like a companion to the movie? Like, it's not. I almost guarantee, but it'd be so cool if by the time we watch Spider-Man 4, we're like, wait a second, all the things we wanted, all the Spider-Verse stuff to connect to the MCU, this does. Like, that'd be dope if we had any sort of parallel. And I do think Spider-Verse 3 is going to bring it all together.
Oh, I certainly hope so. But yeah, what villains do you guys want in this Spider-Man movie? Leave your thoughts down below.
And your casting.
Well, on our community post, I put out a question. On our community post, I do have a Marvel-related question that I thought might be an interesting thing to talk about, considering what we're talking about right now. It's kind of a long question, so I'm just going to read it once. Quentin Anthony Anderson says, would love for y'all to touch on the increasing apparent reality that after years of Marvel touting how interconnected its movies and shows would be, Marvel seems to be moving right back to the old model where the two largely don't have anything to do with each other. While I'm sure cinephiles will say, great, quality over canon, it also is a complete 180 in terms of the value of proposition of the shows to viewers. You have to watch Loki. You won't understand King Dynasty, as well as the deal I'm sure many of the actors who have signed on thought they were getting. I'm sure plenty only said yes to doing a Disney Plus show because they were promised, or at least implied, to eventually get to the big screen in a big, profitable Avengers team-up. Except they literally came out and said you will see less connection. These movies have been from the older era of thinking.
I think it's a very good point. It is interesting that we are kind of getting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again, where it was like, look, Sam Jackson, no, it's fine. Like, we need something to avenge, but Clark Gregg's back. How? But like, so yeah, it does feel like that. Also, Tombstone, bring Keith David from the Spectacular Spider-Man. He'd be amazing as a statesman Tombstone. Or Dennis Haysbert. What a voice. Those are two other Tombstones. I'm still stuck in casting. I think TV-wise, slowing down is a net positive. I think they should do more special presentations that could connect to the movies. I think if they want something that anchors Disney Plus as a must-subscribe thing, they should focus more Werewolf by Night-esque. They should have maybe origins of characters and things that are connected to the movies be oneers. Because I do think there is a bit of a homework element for not us. Like, it's so hard, especially even people viewing, I'm sure, because if you're watching a video about Marvel and DC and comics, there's a certain awareness just inherent to it. There are way more people outside of our bubbles that would see watching 6 weeks of TV as homework in a way that we just can't. I don't see it that way, but I know that if I talk to someone, they're like, wait, if there's been 2 seasons of the show, that feels intimidating when it's not your job or your vocation. So I think a one-off, like a one-shot, like in the comics, something like a special presentation is more realistic. I do think it's also a bit smart of Marvel to, if you're building the shared universe that is 36 films deep, I don't think it's realistic to then expect people to watch 50 hours of TV. And if you're going to do something that feels like it's approachable in post Secret Wars or even leading up to Secret Wars, I don't think people are even going to want to watch 6 hours of Moon Knight to understand who he is. So I think this is a smart direction. As someone who couldn't get through Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm so sorry. It was nice for me to not have that be a prerequisite. Like, I don't enjoy the network TV feel of that show. Like, I'm not a network TV guy. Like, there's a certain acting style, a certain lighting, a certain energy to that show that just isn't my cup of tea. I imagine there are people that love Marvel that don't like the Netflix Daredevil because they don't like that level of darkness, or maybe that's not their style. Like, possibly. I don't know any of them, but it's possible. So what if you don't like that and then you feel like you're missing something in Spider-Man? So I see the merit in it as a comic fan. I love the interconnectivity, but as someone that enjoys this universe existing, I don't want it to break under the weight of itself. And I do think we've gotten to the point where it's a lot more weight and expectation than it is joy for the casual fan.
That's true. That's true. I got nothing to add to that.
All right. I said a lot. I just ranted a little bit there. But I had a lot of thoughts, Greg.
That was great. That was great. Thank you. I'm glad you're going to answer that question. Yeah.
Justice for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I'm so sorry. I felt John's eyes peering into my skull when I said it, but it's how I feel.
I think those are all very good points. I do think in some way, though, they have to be brought to the movies, at least some of them, for the real payoff. I'd be really saddened if they didn't, because there are still like millions of people, at least, who expected that to happen, and they do feel like they'd be rewarded with that. When Charlie Cox showed up for 2 minutes in Spider-Man No Way Home, that was awesome, you know? And yes, he is like the top of the top of the top when it comes to like Marvel TV. But for these other characters, especially like a Moon Knight or something.
But that's what Secret Wars is for, man.
Fucking Oscar Isaac. I know.
That's kind of my point, is like this, they will get that. I just don't think they're going to build those blocks forward.
But Thunderbolts, the TV show, seems like it was necessary viewing.
100%.
Do you think it was? I still haven't seen it, but like I rewatched Black Widow, which, by the way, this is kind of crazy.
Dude, it's so much better than people think it is. It's in my top third, man.
It is much better than I remember. And I'm trying to recall like why I did. Like, I was seeing some of the stuff of why I didn't really like it when it came out. But I think as a random installment in the Marvel universe, when you're not like comparing it to other shit, it's fine. It's fine. Like, I think Yelena's great. I liked David Harbour a lot more this second time around. And do I feel like I didn't really get to know Scarlett Johansson much better? Not really. Do they not really have an understand, like they set it up like, oh right, well she's the human Avenger, but then she like survives the impossible shit and the craziest shit all the time. When she does superhero landing before that one widow like takes herself out, like, oh, that's when I remember this movie starting to lose me, when she like falls down and lands.
I think the villains are a problem. I just don't think it's nearly as bad as people marked it to be at the time. And maybe not my top 30 more, because I haven't redone it in the last like 5 films, but it's probably like upper middle. And that's saying more than people gave it credit for.
Yeah, and I remember Black Widow being that first movie outside of like Thor: The Dark World in the Marvel Pantheon, where it was like, something's not right about Marvel right now.
Has something...
Yeah, but I've come around on it. I enjoyed it. It's a fun movie. I think it's really fun. I love the whole opening.
The opening is one of the best openings in Marvel. I was about to say the opening. The opening is so impactful and powerful.
Yes, I do think it kind of contrasts a little too harsh with how David Harbour, because he seems like a good grounded person.
And then he's like a cartoon.
Then he's like a fucking cartoon years later.
Like a Russian bear.
Yeah,
he's like,
this is like so hardcore.
What happened to you, David Harbour, in those 20 years?
Did you shoot the opening later?
Yeah.
You know, because this does not line up. I don't see everyone else seems like they link to that memory.
But the one person playing themselves again, the only person that plays the older version of themselves.
Yeah, it's more than just him pretending to be an American dad, because even when he's interacting with Winston, Ray Winston?
Yeah.
Yeah, when he's, right? That's the one?
Ray Winston.
When he's interacting with him in the flashback, he doesn't like change into Lexi.
Right,
you know?
right.
So, yeah, but the movie's and it got me excited to actually watch Thunderbolts, so I'm going to rewatch Falcon and Winter Soldier. But you see that payoff, though, it is rewarding and like on a selfish point of view, but not all these characters need to get movies.
I think when the MCU was hitting all of them out of the park, or most of them out of the park, it was something audiences were excited to endeavor on. I think the problem is we saw with the box office numbers of Thunderbolts, not everyone's showing up anymore. So adding homework to people not, like, I think just the weight It's too many weights on the balloons. The balloons need to rise
Yeah.
again. And I think that's why right now it's a good idea. I'm saying this for the longevity of the MCU. I want another 50 years. I don't know if that's realistic, but I want this to keep going. And I do think eventually the weight's going to pull these things down.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, those are our thoughts on it. But thank you for asking that question. We're going to totally take a different turn here now and talk about something different. This is not Jaden. I'm curious to what you guys think of the show The Studio, and maybe some of you guys' story being in a similar space. Okay. The Studio, if you guys don't know, is an Apple TV show written and directed by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, the duo behind Superbad, This Is the End, Neighbors, some great comedies. And Seth Rogen stars in it. He plays a head of studio named Matt, taking over Continental Studios. And a big part of the appeal that you do with this character is he loves cinema, and he feels like now he is contributing to being a destroyer of cinema, this constant tug and pull of like what's a green light and not. And a lot of people, Seth Rogen has said it's very much inspired by like the Larry Sanders Show. So then you think of like other shows that Larry Sanders inspired. Like it's to me, it's a blend of Curb Your Enthusiasm meets Birdman. Those are my two.
I was going Curb and Entourage.
I can
what I've been calling
see
it.
some of the Entourage is a lot more like hangout though.
Oh, yeah, that's the Curb element. Like Curb is like a slice of life in a weird setting, and then the hang is when they're off set. Like that to me is the Entourage element, and obviously the Hollywood stuff.
Well, I think this show has an unusual intensity to it. Like the way they manage to take things that might seem like, not all the time. Sometimes it's like they're dealing with a lot of money, but I love when they could take something that feels micro, but they make a huge problem out of it. One of the best, this show is shot in an incredibly unique way. There are no cuts. So not every episode is like a oneer. There's one episode that's a oneer, and it's called The Oneer.
Stunning. It's so meta.
It's a great episode. It's the second episode's amazing. But what I mean by they never cut is that whenever you go to a scene, there's no cuts. So every single scene that's stitched together with like 5 uncut scenes usually.
Magic.
And Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg directed it all. So it's a tightly scripted show. Like this show needs a tight script. It's not the Judd Apatow, Seth Rogen era of improvised comedy. You are watching filmmaking.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's not, whenever it feels like a thing that is a reverence or masturbatory way of Hollywood, it still does it in a way that feels nice. And it also really shows the difficulties and the struggles and the hardships and the ugliness. Yet it's also makes you appreciate cinema. It is a full rounded show where I've never seen a comedy show that made me so tense and stressed out consistently and laugh a lot. Like it has that like Curb Your Enthusiasm thing of, something's just going to go terribly wrong for this guy. The most embarrassing shit's about to happen like every single episode. But more than Curb, I am literally like tense.
Yeah.
And Seth Rogen has usually implemented that. I'm a huge Seth Rogen fan. He's usually implemented that into his work. He knows how to find the intensity. Superbad finds those thriller elements. This Is the End finds those horror elements. He knows, and that's why he's a great producer for things like The Boys and Preacher.
Yeah, I was gonna say like his comic stuff is so intense and high octane and so palpably like and then the levity that comes out of that tension.
And I love this character because this is a guy who can be very unlikable.
Yeah,
because he needs to be liked. That's what's so brilliant.
And what a great eyeline for anyone that loves movies. Like I feel like people that love movies as passionately as we do, as passionately as you probably do to watch this, as passionately as people that watch The Studio, it's so reasonable to be like, but I just want the movie stars to like me. Like it's such a, I identify so much more with this character than I'm comfortable with. Like the day I got on TikTok, I felt like the day of he's like, I'm ending society. Like I hate that I have to be part of like certain elements of our job feels like it hurts art for me. And our job is so much defending us doing the things that isn't about defending art. Like I feel like so many of our conversations are about the reactions to the internet or the reactions to the arts that we discuss on the internet. And I think that's because we're so in tune with like, I don't want to mess it up. I want to be a part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that's such Seth Rogen's character. And I love that there's a character in mainstream art that is about someone being like, look, I just want people to like me. I want to be on the right side of history. I want to move things forward, but everything's at odds with each other. Like the Kool-Aid episode with casting Ice Cube. Like I have been in so many rooms like that. I know every one of these executives. Like every single person in the show is an executive I've met and dealt with.
Yeah.
All of these situations are so this town, and it's perfect.
And it's cool that the show spans a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Like a year or something.
CinemaCon.
It spans a year, but each episode, it's a serial show, but very episodic at the same time.
You can watch them out of order. It's better to watch them in order.
Yeah, it's almost like a connected anthology story of this one guy and his team.
Yeah.
You know, because, they have like amazing guest stars. And when the guest stars are there, they're full-blown characters. And it's not like cameo fodder in the way how some of them are like, this is the end.
Yeah. They're fully playing an important part of the plot as themselves elevated.
And they show up to play.
Yeah. Dave Franco doing the work. Zoe Kravitz, some of her best.
Zoe Kravitz has 2 episodes and she is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And it's more than, I'm here to just take the piss out of myself. They do that.
Sure.
But not in a way that feels like they're winking at the camera. Like Ron Howard, when he shows up, it's like a supporting role.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen Ron Howard act his ass off like that in a long time. And
the fact that the people playing themselves play it at the cost of themselves is so joyous to see. Like Ted Sarandos taking the piss out of himself was amazing, and I didn't expect that from him. It makes me appreciate the people that are willing to take jabs like that, and like that's what reminds me of Entourage. Like when Val Kilmer showed up as the Stone Sherpa in the first episode of Entourage, I was like, that was before Val Kilmer like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang really became his tone. And I was like, this is Iceman. Like, what are we doing? And so to have the show have cameos that are part of the story, that are taking a bit of a jab at the town while loving it. It's so hard to balance sardonic humor and a love letter. And this show feels like it's a love letter to Hollywood while being very aware that we take ourselves way too seriously.
Yeah, and I think that Seth Rogen really embodies the cinephile of today, of the kind of guy who keeps wanting to go back to like old Hollywood in a way.
We can't call him Marty anymore after they shut down the movie. That scene to me was the moment I was like, I love this character. When he ruins Martin Scorsese's passion project final film, goes home and watches Goodfellas, and then Sal calls him Marty. He's like, no, it's Mr. Scorsese now. That summarizes the whole character to me, and I love it.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil the show for anyone. I want to encourage people to watch this show.
I want to thank Sal Saperstein. You'll see why.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sal Saperstein.
The way they construct everything is easily Seth Rogen's best role.
I agree.
He is not playing himself. It's like he has everything you love about Seth Rogen.
He's funny. He's got the dry wit. It's all there, but it's not in the usual way.
You believe him as the suit. You believe him as the guy who's running this studio, and you also believe him as this human being who's in a position that's way over his head. So you kind of do root for him, even in his most like sometimes he's very unlikable.
Oh yeah,
the
doctor episode.
I feel. Does Anya watch with you?
Yeah. She loves it.
She does? Okay, yeah. I want to show. Olivia generally doesn't like Seth Rogen's work.
Okay.
But I kind of want to show it to her because
I think this might be a gateway in. Because like Anya loves Seth Rogen, but there are types of humor that are similar to Seth Rogen she doesn't like. So I was worried when the show started, I'd be like, but I love it. Like I love it so much I was protective of it. So I was so glad this was the right type of comedy for her.
Catherine O'Hara, who's also in The Last of Us right now, she's amazing in the show.
Yeah.
Ike Barinholtz.
Dude, we didn't
Saperstein.
see him for a while, and I'm so glad he's back. Like, he was everywhere for a bit, and then there was like 3 years I was like, where's this guy? And now he's...
I believe the first one they worked on together was Neighbors.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Nick Stoller directed that. Nick Stoller's in this, and he's great. Nick Stoller directed Neighbors?
Yeah. I thought it was Seth. I thought that was Rogen and Goldberg.
John, check the tapes. I'm 90% sure it's Nick Stoller. I'd put money on it if I was a gambling man.
Nick Stoller usually directs the rom-coms.
Survey says Nick Stoller.
Yes.
He did?
Yeah, dude.
But Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg wrote it? I had that wrong this whole time.
Andrew J. Cohen and Brendan O'Brien.
Nicholas Stoller joint.
I really thought that they...
That's why I was so excited to see him in it, because I was like, oh, Neighbors reunion.
That makes more sense now.
But yeah, I think it's some of the best work of all of them. Catherine Hahn.
She's the one who I'm noticing a hit or miss with people I talk to.
Interesting.
Some people think she's a little too cartoony.
She's big.
I think she's definitely the biggest one of them all. She's making choices and committing to it. But undoubtedly, like I like actually talking with my friends who are in the industry and work with studio heads and shit. So it's like fun to see their take on it. And yeah, they have a hard time getting on board with Catherine Hahn.
I feel like
I've never met a Catherine Hahn.
Oh, that's the one that I definitely know.
Yeah,
There's someone I know that we text about her outfits because he identifies. It's really great. She dresses like a Gen Z PR person. I respect that.
Well, there's a whole list of cameos just to kind of entice you guys to watch this show. All right. You have Martin Scorsese, Ice Cube, Zoe Kravitz, Adam Scott. I'm not trying to ruin like some of the really small ones. Anthony Mackie. I'm telling you about when they're like actually characters in there. Zac Efron. Anthony Starr does have a pretty fun role there. And Sarah Polley as well. It's a really unique show, and it messes with genre. The music is it is like such an anxiety-induced music. That's the part that reminds me of Birdman the most.
Oh, I see that. I also want to give credit to someone we haven't mentioned at all yet somehow. I think his third most iconic TV role after Hal and Walter White, Bryan Cranston in this.
Yeah.
Good God, is Bryan Cranston amazing in this show?
Yeah, it shows us why he can do comedy, man.
Yeah, he's a genius. It's so funny. Like, I don't know, the show, it's everything I wanted to have it be. Shameless name drop of the week. I went to the premiere and it was incredible. And like they really cared about the whole thing feeling like an old Hollywood premiere. But the coolest conversation I had about it was with someone that's been in this town for 30 years. That's why I'm bringing this up. Is I was talking to someone that was a child actor that is now still doing acting and does a lot of cons and does a lot of like podcasting and stuff. And he was basically describing the evolution of this town. And it was a really cool conversation about how the town kind of repeats itself. And like, it was the repetition that was interesting because this show is so topical, but these are problems we've had forever. And I think a lot of people talk about IP being the death of Hollywood now, but there's always been stuff like the Western has risen and fallen. Musicals have risen and fallen. And it was Ryder Strong. I'll just name drop. Ryder Strong and I had this great conversation for like 40 minutes about the different eras of Hollywood that he's seen. And now he's doing these cons and how much he loves the cons because he gets connected to people that have seen it from the outside, and it reminds him why he does it. And he said this show was something that reminds him why he does it because the eye line of someone that's such a cinephile, but it's Seth, and like connecting with Seth over loving filmmaking, he feels like the show translates that in a new way. And I thought that was a really cool insight from someone that literally was like born into this. And it was really funny. I also briefly got to talk to Seth Rogen about comics. I had to. And I basically thanked him for greenlighting all the projects no one else would. And he was like, it's actually funny because it's been the easier stuff to get greenlit because they're the unknowns, but then I can put all my passion into it. And I really want the people like you that read it and loved it to feel seen, but also to make sure that people discover it. And we had this long talk about IP adaptation, the balance of Hollywood versus like the musts and the necessities and the core elements. But then I asked him like how he was able to get this edited so fast. Like, how do you do a show that's so topical, film it like that, have all that buttoned up, that is so scripted. And he's like, it's the predictability of Hollywood. The problem is there's all these cycles. The reason Hollywood falls apart is all the things I'm doing. We've been done with this show. And I was like, that's crazy that he's able to like map out 4D chess, have the show filmed and everything else. He's like, this is going to be a problem next year and have that ready. So like two very cool, insightful conversations. This show is, I think, my favorite show on TV.
I've heard you say this before, and I can understand the concern that it might not have like a broader appeal or it might be a little too niche. And I think that's where the magic comes into the characters. I think we all know what it's like to feel like we have imposter syndrome. I think we all know what it feels like when you want to do your best, you have different intentions, and then you end up having to do something that might go against your intentions, you know? So they managed to find a way to take this. Usually the studio head, in movie talk, they're the villain.
Yeah.
And this really does show you like, oh yeah, they could get fired at any moment.
Right.
It's a hard job. And the pressure surrounding it, nor is it a pity party for studio people.
No.
It's not at all. It's not victimizing them or being like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's just a human portrayal, but that consistently aims to make you, to entertain you. And it is one of the most entertaining things I've seen. And it is a show that it was weekly television for me where I could not wait till Wednesday.
I waited. Yeah, that's the first show since Ted Lasso and Shrinking. Like those are, and All Apple. Those are the shows where I'm like, it's that day of the week. And I haven't had that in a long time.
Yeah, now you can binge it. So please watch this show. It's kind of crazy what Apple can do because I'm not really aware of how popular they are. I know they got like a couple of shows that are super popular.
I did a review and it's pre-2024 Coy numbers. Like my page was dormant for like pandemic until like April of this year. I'd occasionally put up a review. My review did those numbers. Like I want to like be a piece of getting the word out about this.
Yeah.
Like, cause I tried and I'm like, just people don't know it and I want them to know it.
Well, with Apple, it's interesting. I think some people might gawk at Apple because they're Apple, you know, the tech company. is now doing television shows so it can feel like insincere. But we got to remember, Apple's thrived off of wanting to innovate and create.
Their products were about being creative in a stiff world.
Yeah.
Like that's what the mission that Steve Jobs had was. I feel like this is that being applied to TV.
And of course, they're a corporation, so I don't want to suck any D right now or some shit like that. I'm just saying that
They did not send us iPhones.
they're not saying shit, all right? Like, so, but when I see the stuff they're producing at such a high quality, because they have all this money from all the other things they produce.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
All the tech industry money, they're able to like produce these very creative filmmaker-driven shows.
Yeah.
And throw all this money at it to make it great. Like I saw the first episode of Murderbot, and it's so fun. It is such a fun show. And I'm like, God damn, the money and creativity that they actually have at their disposal, it's kind of gnarly.
Killers of the Flower Moon. They threw all that money at Martin Scorsese. Like I think if you're gonna be a giant corporation that makes billions of dollars, the least you can do is throw hundreds of $1 millions at art. And I'm so glad someone is. Like I hope that's a precedent for some other company to go like perhaps also the arts. Like I feel like this is a great way to show like it is a mega corporation, but look what we made.
Well, I think they're in. Do you know the difference between finite game and infinite game? Have you ever heard this?
No, tell me.
So finite game is like a really easy thing to pinpoint down. Basketball, like whoever gets the most points by the end, they win the game. And then there's infinite game where there's really no winning. Like if your channel, if we both do a review of the studio and your video gets more views than me, how does that really affect me? It's an infinite game. We're in an infinite game situation. I think a lot of streamers are in finite mentality in an infinite game. So they're trying to be like, we got to beat Netflix. We got to beat Disney Plus. We got to beat this. And then when it's not going according to plan, they're kind of panicking and people are getting fired and all this crazy shit. I think Apple's playing the infinite game where they're like, we're focusing just solely on quality. We're focusing on our fans. And we want to just keep building up that reputation, keep building that up, because down the road, this level of quality and how we're attracting all these top level talents who keep wanting to work with us, they're playing infinite. And that is the smart way to do it. And having that mentality does help in general as a person with trying not to compare yourself to people and like realizing like, oh, it doesn't really matter if this person does more than me, because sometimes I might do better. We're in an infinite game.
Yeah, I like that.
And like our careers are an infinite game terrain. There's no one to really beat. And I think Apple is very much aware of that. And that's how they play the game.
I love that take. I've talked about it for years. I think since Ted Lasso, they're my most consistent streamer. I really like that perspective because, they have the bandwidth to not be reactionary. Yeah. They get to be responsive.
They get to be responsive because they have all this fucking money.
The dream to be responsive.
Billions and billions of dollars.
You want to take a swing at a Scorsese film? Yeah, we got it.
Well, it's a unique streaming service in the weirdest way. And what I mean by that is when I go to any streaming service, I'm looking for the stuff I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
The movies and shows I've seen in the past. But when I go to Apple, it's mainly their shows.
It's all their original
mainly
IP.
their original. Like they have other stuff, but usually it's
varied.
Like, wow, they really promote and push forward their original stuff. And that's what I mean. They're in the infinite game.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hopefully have any of you watch the studio after us ranting. Please, in the comments, this is what I'm going to be looking for. Anyone, discover the studio.
Or
it
shrinking.
Gave me such joy.
Shrinking. Two very different vibes. I personally prefer shrinking more because I love the way it makes me feel. Whereas studio, when I watch too much of that back to back, I get stressed out.
I really enjoy shrinking because of the way it makes me feel like we've achieved therapy being normalized. But I feel more seen with the studio in a way that I don't normally feel seen. I feel like a lot of art, I can identify with elements of a character. The studio makes me feel like I'm not crazy, and that really helps me. Ironically, the shrinking show that is about feeling insane, the studio show makes me feel so seen. It's really like a warm blanket, which I don't know what that says about me, but I love that show. A warm blanket of anxiety.
Well, Johnny, ready to react to Severance?
I am so ready. G, give me Severance. Give me the shrinking. Give me Silo. Give me anything and everything from the Apple.
Very anxiety-driven Severance. I like that that's their theme.
We're trying to figure out, like, we're doing some new directions here at Real Rejects. I'll give you guys a little bit of tease about it. And part of that new terrain is I'm starting to go, like, what can we build out instead of going, this is a popular show, let's cover a popular show, or we think this might be popular, let's cover it, right? Because yes, a lot of work does go into this, and there's financials involved, the whole shebang. But then, you have a little bit of extra stuff set aside so you can experiment a little bit.
Infinite game.
Take some risks, infinite game. No, seriously.
No,
That's what
I
it is.
agree.
It's infinite game.
Some of the things I've told you about like a year ago, we look like we're approaching implementing because we're in that mindset now.
Keep a lookout for my Jurassic Park video with Tara.
Oh.
And
a trilogy we're doing, right? Have you talked about it yet?
We'll mention
I'm
when we film
excited.
it. When we film
okay,
it, we'll
once
mention
it's in the
it.
can, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, okay, let's say we're doing like the studio and it's only getting like 5,000 to 10,000 views. But what if we do actually start to help that?
If we can affect people watching it, I'm so happy.
Yeah. And then what if that starts to grow, and then naturally both in the infinite game, our viewership for that would grow over time, and as well as Apple. I don't know. There's a lot of different parameters. We've had things where we thought that with stuff before, but they've just capped off at that. Yeah.
And those 7 people did enjoy our video.
Yeah. But hey, whatever we can to put out some word about it.
I think that's what we just did here, right? Like I love this show for that like platforming art we want to spotlight. And if we can grow that into full form reactions, great too.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. I was a little bit in a weird headspace today and apologize for that, but hopefully it didn't show too much. Thanks, Coy, for bringing the A game as per usual. Thanks, John, for manning this ship down, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Let's end this with a Patreon question. All right, patrons. I've been really loving our patron community a lot lately. Always have, but now more so than ever. And let me see here. There's one question here that I thought would be a fun thing that we could even clip out.
Oh.
Marco Tunstill. When someone says this, I'm like, I want to read it. Hopefully not too deep. Here we go. But how do you guys think dealing with comments has changed you? Like, would you say it has caused any anxiety to worsen? Sometimes when I listen to you guys, it almost sounds like you got PTSD from dealing with commenters. When you're talking, you go, and watch the comments are going to be a bunch of angry people or something like that. Coy, how do you feel comments has changed you? Let's backtrack a little bit.
Oh.
When did you start doing stuff on the internet?
I started full time. I think like in the way that I see comments now, 2019, I started part time before Deadpool came out. So I was doing YouTube with Winter Soldier, but I wasn't doing it on my own until 2019. And I didn't start my own page until a year ago, April.
Okay.
Well, so those 3 tiers, like I've accelerated from 10 years to 5 years to 1 year.
But your exposure to comments about you began in 2019, 2018?
I would say 2018, 2019, they were, I saw it all.
How old would you have been?
30.
Okay. So we started this in 2013 was when we went gung-ho. So it's been about 12 years of comments for me. So about 22 years old is when my exposure to comments began. And we're bringing that. I think it's important to note that first, because that's when the exposure begins. But how would you answer this question? When was
Winter Soldier? 2012, 2014? I think it was 2014. I'm not sure. John, could you check for me?
Release dates are not me.
I just remember that was the movie I really started going gung-ho.
So yeah, to bring back the question, now that we're there.
It's April 4th, 2014.
Yes.
Cool.
I forgot about that. So 2014 is when I was like reading Screen Junkies and those things. I noticed them feeling personal when I started doing my own channel to scale. That's why there's 2 different times for me. But exposure would have been 2014 as far as like people talking about me on someone's channel.
Got it. Okay. So roughly about a decade.
Yeah.
So how do you think comments has changed you?
I think I think I've separated people into 2 types of people. People that are on the internet to intentionally be malicious, and people that are using the internet. And I think I have the same amount of faith in the average person, but I think I have absolutely no faith in users. So like, I think the person that goes on YouTube and absorbs YouTube and is entertained by YouTube and watches and learns and grows is someone that uses it as a platform. I think that there's a reason the only 2 types of people you call users are internet people and drug addicts. Like there are people that are users, and those people I don't have much faith in because of comments. So like I think that there are people that are weaponizing their anonymity on YouTube and other places that have message boards. I think there are people that are seeking an outlet for their hurt because they're hurt and broken, and that's a place where they can lash out. But I don't think of that as the average person, and that took growing. So I've gone through phases of I love the internet. It's immediately a community. It's a communication. It's an outlet. It's a way to like gather like minds. And then I had a phase of like enjoying that we are growing this thing together, and the largely the comic book community is rallying towards us getting these movies and stuff because of the internet. And then the late stages of the golden age, it started getting so toxic that it wasn't fun. And then I had to separate, like, if I want to believe in mankind, I need to believe that mankind isn't all these people. So I had to separate it into users and consumers. So it has made me more paranoid of users because they look the same, but it has made me more optimistic that when I look at the number of comments and it's like 1,000 comments and the video has 30,000 views, I just have to take a second to go like, hey, that's 1 out of 30 that even comments. And out of those are maybe 100 bad people. That is such a small number. So remember the 30,000, remember the million, remember those people, and don't let these people be your bad day or your belief in society. I think it's really easy to fall into society's crumbling, everything's wrong, everything's bad, because that stuff pops up, that stuff gets more likes, that stuff gets people globbing on. They don't make positivity bots, they make negative bots. They don't make news stories out of good news often. That's why some corporation bought John Krasinski's Some Good News, because it makes news look bad. So I think you need to keep that in perspective when you look at comments, because it definitely makes me doubt mankind when I'm not being steadfast.
I felt like a lot of that talk was what you were saying, while very valuable, was a lot about your observation about commenters. I feel like there's something missing though. I didn't fully grasp, like, how are you a different person from it? Because
I had to separate what I see society as.
Got it.
I mean, maybe I'm not being clear. I think I'm a different person because if I read those comments and I see the negative, like, I would have less faith in mankind. And I think I did for a time, but I think I've gotten back to realizing those are either hurt people, not real people, or the exception to the rule, because the average person doesn't spend their time on writing comments. Mm-hmm. So I think it's given me a bit of a thicker skin because I have to like separate, but it also has had me at times doubt humanity and has brought me back into going, look, no, look at the numbers, look at the statistics, look at the actual thing. So I think there is some PTSD because there has to be like a certain amount of aversion, because like art isn't made for everyone. That's the point. Art needs to evict, certain types of people, and it also needs to elicit certain emotions. So if I don't agree with someone's comment, it isn't about the person. It's about maybe we see the art differently. So it's made me more, I have to not knee-jerk react because there are so many variables. So I caution, I think, is how it's changed me most. When I meet someone in person, I don't assume we're going to have a problem. When I read comments, I assume we're going to have a problem.
I would agree with that. Whenever I go into the comments, I'm immediately, I'll admit it, I'm afraid almost every single time. Even though we had that experience with the Fantastic Four trailer where I wasn't affected by the amount of negative comments dished our way, I still have the apprehension of it. This has been kind of a topic that's been up in my life the past 48 hours, even recently in the last meeting we just had, is how, like, I feel like I've been a part, I don't feel like, I know I have, I've been a part of like essentially 2 cults in my life and before YouTube, right? And the reason I bring that up is because my mind, especially back then, has been susceptible to influence, and when this channel started, of course, unpacking it later, a lot of it was, wanting to get recognition, get love, get validation, get noticed. And so when it's happening through comments, it's validating. And when it's not, it's devastating. And there were both very powerful emotions at all times. And then it's kind of a weird timeline we live in now, because it's not normal to walk around with a box in our pocket that gets us all these messages at any moment in time. It's not normal to be exposed to this amount of feedback about who you are, your opinions and stuff. And I've been through, online drama. I've been through that, the Ringer, and that was that supersedes, hate comments. It's a completely different terrain when you're in the territory of other people's videos and feel like you're part of a reality show now. Like that kind of shit is that shit for sure is like, it felt like PTSD. And I think it did affect me, and I assume everywhere I go, people do not like what I do. I think people are lying to my face, if I'm being totally frank. And when people, a lot of times I feel, especially if it's in the YouTube space, if it's in the industry space, there's a lot of reaction channels that have started post Real Rejects. We were one of the early ones, but reaction channels have now branched off into like a billion different things, right? From music content to a bunch of different types of versions of movie reactions, so on and so forth. And there's a bunch of amazing reaction channels out there. And a lot of them did start after Real Rejects time. But there was a very specific period where reaction channels were the target of YouTube. They were the cancer, quote unquote, the cancer of YouTube. And there's like 2 to 3 other YouTubers I can think of who were lumped into there, and Real Rejects was often lumped into that camp. But the pro of that, it made me go, I don't want us to only be a channel that relies on a big expression. I want the commentary. So before we used to lean onto like, you know, I come from late night talk show background of admiration. So we leaned more into the comedy back then. And we always really cared about the commentary, you know? So even when we get like shit on the Superman trailer reaction going viral and hitting the trending page, people are like, oh, reaction channels, the laziest, someone will inevitably say that. The laziest channel goes trending. And I'm like, you mean like there's 2.5 minutes of the reaction? It's a 23-minute video.
Yeah. It is 8% of the video. Like it's 10% at most. And our commentary is from a perspective of emotional connection, film connection, comic connection. Like it is the farthest thing from that low common denominator. Yeah. But the comment affects you. And that's what I think is really interesting about, I love this question because going into the comments is literally, it only is those two things. It's only going to elevate you or devastate you. It's only going to be like, oh my God, and why do I do this?
I am not apathetic to it.
I'm not at all. And I still do it. Like, I don't know why I read those anymore. There's like, I think I always want the connection. I always want to connect with people, but we don't have the gray matter to connect with that many people. We're not supposed to. Like there's only a volume of people we're supposed to ever know. And I love our job. I love that we connect to so many people, but it is overwhelming. And I think a lot of the devastation comes from being threadbare because we are so vulnerable to so much because the whole point is opening up. The whole goal is to like, let me share my joy with you. It would be, if we did like a counting YouTube, I wouldn't be like, they don't like my math. Yeah. But since it's our opinion, that's here. And so when someone's mad at this part of you, not your analytics, that's hard. Yeah. So I get why so many people do angry YouTube because it's easy. I get why so many people say, I hate this thing, because worst case, your comments are people going, well, I like it, but you're still the guy going, well, cynicism means I'm smart. And cynicism's the furthest thing from intelligence. It's the easiest, dumbest thing. Yeah. So I think the reason that we're so affected is because it's an earnest wanting people to feel joy.
Here's the trajectory I notice with most YouTubers when they start out. You start up a YouTube channel. You've heard the cautionary signs of, hey, don't read comments. You've been told that, but you're also getting the opposite advice. You have to engage with comments. You have to create engagement with your community. So you should be replying to every single comment. At first, it's good. You're growing a community, and then you start getting some negative comments. Then you start overthinking it, and you lose sight of logic. You lose sight of real numbers. If your video is getting like a 99% like ratio, but you saw a couple of negative comments, you're kind of in this mindset because you're not used to it. That, oh my God, people hate me. And then before you know it, you start filming videos with this in the back of your mind that people don't like you, and then you're kind of changing the way you're behaving to acclimate to the people who, when you're assuming you're going to get a hate comment, and then you have to find a way to work around this. Before you know it, you're retaliating really harshly in comments, and Twitter, people are like, oh, come on, you're supposed to be better than that. You should be used to, like, then you got then you're getting people judging you for how you're handling hate comments. Yeah. And when you're just being a fucking human being. And this is not only my experience. This is most people I notice when they deal with it. And then when people change on YouTube via through this experience, it's like, well, you know, you got to understand you're getting like a bunch of arrows on your back. And so sometimes it does harden you. It's caused me to be more disciplined. It's caused me to be more logical. I feel like it's led to a much better channel. And yeah, you know, but I'm older now. It's like 12 years or something. So I respond to it differently. But for sure, I would say 100%. Like, this is a topic that I feel like this is an easy thing that people say a lot, but I really do feel like we can unpack this for hours.
Sure, and I totally agree.
Been
like
a defining part of my life.
100%. I mean, it's a decade. Yeah, and that's the reason I re-quantified the Winter Soldier. Is it's a very clear 12 years for you. it's about 11 years for me, a little off and on, but a strong 6 years for me. That is a lifetime of just having access to thousands and tens of thousands of people being mad at you. That's not healthy. So I do think it's not the way we're wired. I don't think it's the way we're meant to be. I don't think we're meant to be exposed to it, but the juice is still worth the squeeze. Like, I still love people more than I hate the comments. So I think that's why that's why I had that long preamble. I had to separate. Otherwise, I shouldn't do this. Yeah. But I've learned I have to separate. That's why I'm not on Twitter as much anymore.
I think what people also, if there's one piece of advice I would like to give people when it comes to comments, is you have to be honest with yourself of why you are reading comments. Just be real with yourself. Because some people will tell me, I'm reading it because I feel like, even though some negative ones, I feel like I could get good feedback. Absolutely. That could 100% be true. There's been a couple of negative comments that I could think of that actually made me reflect and change. The response to Agatha led a different direction of like, oh, the tide has changed now where people want more sincerity, which is great because that lines up with more what I want to do is be more sincere. And so sometimes there is a golden truth there, but more often than not, I'll see people who say that, who think they're just loaded with hate when I'm like, no, you're not. It's only a few comments. It's only a few, but you think this. And so sometimes it's like, if you want to dive in because you're kind of addicted to it, just admit it. Just admit you're addicted to it. I mean, I'm addicted to my YouTube Creator Studio app. I'm opening it all the fucking time. And I'm not as honest with myself. I often will blame the way it's built, but the reality is like, I got to take responsibility, and I have my own addiction to it. And I think people need to be honest with themselves too about what it's an emotional process. Like, I know some people are so thick-skinned that they're impenetrable, but that is, I think, the minority of people who deal with comments. Majority, it is a hard thing, and it is a reality to deal with. It's not easy when you're on the receiving end, and we have to have sympathy for people and empathy for people.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great question, because I think about it all the time, and I think about how it's affecting me, and I think about like whether it's worth it. And this isn't something I want to deal with forever, but I still think there's more good than bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Great question.
Thanks for being here, guys.